beautiful. It looks like it's melting. I went to bed last night. There was no snow on the ground, and now
Mm-hmm.
8 inches this morning. So, oh well. Oh well, I guess it's part of it. We've talked about it before, where it's this: you get this false spring, and it's like 70 degrees, and you're like, I'm gonna go clean up the yard and plant some flowers, and then everything gets buried in 10 inches of new snow that week later. So
Yeah, I try to warn myself, like, the first week of March when we get like that taste of spring, that little tease, you got to get through March first,
yeah,
because there is always that chance for that late March snowstorm. But just
yeah,
reminds you, winter's not quite over yet.
yeah. I remember one year it may still have been Omniture Summit at the time, where it was just this like start to March was just beautiful and warm, and the flowers were out. And I want to say that summer was even around the end of March, third week of March or so. And the day before snow day or the ski day hit, it dumped. Like, I think the mountains got like 2 feet of snow or something that night, just something
Mm,
crazy. So yeah, I think you got to make it all the way through March.
yeah,
Yep. But that's about it. Craving a chicken sandwich.
nice. I just had lunch before we got on,
Yeah.
so yeah. So this way, our talk of food won't leave me hungry through the
Yeah.
rest of the recording.
It's just gonna work on me and pull my attention, and then seeing you and others talk online about the Intamans guy.
Yep.
I'm like, you know, need some
Yeah.
kind of a coffee cake or something.
Those raspberry danishes, like, they were
Mm,
my dad's thing.
yeah,
So when we were kids, like, that was a treat, man. When he'd come home from work with one of those, that was, for dessert after dinner. Yeah. And like, the thing is he'd say, go get some Entenmann's, but like, when you talk about the brand name kind of being genericized,
mm-hmm.
he would say go get Entenmann's, but he meant that one thing. It's not exactly a one-to-one, thing, but
Right,
like,
right.
Entenmann's was the raspberry Danish, nothing
Got it.
else.
Makes sense. When I think about it, I think about the Seinfeld episode. Do they have a castle at Windsor? No, they have a what is something on the end of the aisle? They have a display on the end of the aisle. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good episode. That's the episode where Elaine ate the cake from pre World War One or something, pre World War Two cake or something.
Yeah.
That was a good one. That was a good one. Man, now I'm so hungry. I'm hungry and tired and need a shower.
Nice. So this is going to be a good mix today.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see how it plays out.
Hmm.
So
But it should be good, because I want to wrap up the topic we've been covering the last few weeks. We've been talking about the concept of actively being involved in owning and managing a business versus the allure of other things that lead to a more passive management and ownership style.
yeah,
A couple weeks ago, we kicked it off just kind of discussing what that meant and some of the signs that's what happened, or like signs that the original owners are still very focused on the business, and the pros and cons of both. And then we dug in a bit and talked about, like, who your regular customers are, and being able to listen to them, and then moving on to one of the results of maybe not being as involved in owning or managing a business is the operationalization of everything, everything being overburdened with process and procedure.
mm-hmm.
So I mean, we've really talked about this topic. It's been fun to talk about, but I want to wrap it up. And where I want to talk about today is goals of a business, and ultimately one of the things that can be a sign that ownership is not taking an active role, ownership or management not taking an active role in the day-to-day running of a business, is out of touch goals.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that we see time to time, where people put goals in place as to be a motivating factor for employees, but are those goals actually in touch with the current state of the business? Is it in touch with the current state of the product, or in touch with customers, or leading to the best outcome of customers? So we've touched on it in so many other contexts. I could think back to several conversations we've had around, employee productivity goals, sales goals, lead generation goals. We've talked about several stories about this, but I do want to revisit it in a way without being too redundant, in the context of, you know, that being a result of not being involved to the level of detail needed to successfully run a business.
Yeah, and I'm interested if you have some examples, but I think a big part of that, especially where you have this sense of lack of ownership, is that the goals tend to be departmentalized, or role specific, because that seems to be the easiest thing to grasp to, especially if you're not getting any kind of leadership from the top down to help understand what it is that we are trying to do as a company. And so I think it makes sense. And I've been guilty of maybe being too strong at attacking companies that do that, but to empathize with them, I can see how it can get to that state where you don't have any sense of ownership at the top. You don't have leadership that has any kind of sense of ownership or what you're trying to solve for as a business. And when there's that vacuum, you're like, well, what do we do? And what we know is what we know from our trade. I'm a marketer, I'm a product manager, I'm a support rep. And so you start to think in terms of your trade, and you start to come up with at least measures for yourself, because no one else is really helping to guide those measures. So in that sense, I can see where companies get into that state. But again, I think a lot of times it comes down to that when there's not a sense of ownership at the top as far as what you're trying to do as a company, what tends to become the default metric. And there's a couple really good Simon Sinek talks about this. But if there's lack of ownership of why we even have a company, what becomes the default reason for the why?
Revenue.
Revenue, right? If we don't have a reason why we exist, the default in everyone's mind is to make money. And then that flows into kind of the goals of what we're trying to do. But I guarantee that for most businesses, at least the inception, there was some other reason for existing. We're trying to solve a specific problem. We have a passion for doing X. We want to create a different way to provide Y. There was some sort of reason why the company was started and existed, and it was lost over time. And typically that loss is when the people that actually own the company start to step away, and there's no transition to help the rest of the company fill that void of lack of ownership, involved in running the company. And again, when that happens, if it's not completely managed and thought through how we're going to um, work towards our shared purpose, it comes down to revenue, which starts to deteriorate all these goals. And we start to just, my favorite analogy is that, and I think you might be slightly a little too young, but the football game, the electric football game where you put the players on it, you plugged it in, and they all kind of rattled around and kind of spun around, and there
Mm-hmm.
was no cohesion to it. That's what ultimately ends up happening when you have this passive ownership in a company, and everyone starts to do their own thing.
Yeah, and I mean, like, one specifically, this happens to agencies all the time. I think, and I mean, there's multiple reasons, but this is one of them, where you no longer are just measured on utilization. We have beaten utilization to death here, but I
Yeah.
am bringing it up again today. In an agency, you get measured based, or the agency itself measures utilization as a KPI, but then it ultimately bleeds down to the employees, because, to your point, employees lose a sense of why are they doing this, why are they engaging with this client, why
Right.
is the work that they're doing valuable, why does the client value it, all of those things. They lose a sense of why, and it just becomes checking things off a list. So, and I mean, it's happened to me in the past where one of my quarterly goals was my utilization rate, and it was so backwards. Instead of the utilization rate being a metric, it was now the goal,
Yeah.
and because it was used for those, it was used as a stick to punish people. But also, it's a goal like that. Someone's obviously not in touch with the business because you directly impact that number. Oh, my utilization's been down a couple of weeks, so I just gotta find a way to bill some projects
I
and
mean,
make sure it gets up, and I have a high utilization rate for the end of the quarter.
um, obviously you're poking the bear here on
Not necessarily.
it.
It was just not intentionally.
Yeah.
It's just like when I think of the out of touch goals, I just reminded of a period of time where I wasn't I wasn't my goal wasn't um, client happiness, renewals, um, successful deployments, you name it. My major goal was to maintain a utilization rate.
Yeah,
And
and again, that's when there's a lack of a active owner or lack of a feeling of active ownership. If that vacuum is left to exist, then the goal becomes revenue, which for a services organization becomes utilization rate.
mm-hmm.
That's it, and it overpowers everything else, and it's frustrating to me for two reasons. One, it's obviously frustrating on the experience it creates for employees, and that was a huge driver for starting 33 Sticks, was to see if we could do this differently, and the challenge that others told me that you can't do it differently. This is the way it has to be done, and if you try to do it differently, you'll fail. So that was a huge motivator for starting the company. Was, well, at least I want to see if it's possible, and if not, then I have my answer. I don't want to work in services because this model is broken, it's horrific, and employees have highly negative experiences working in services. And that's just the honest truth. Now, people may lie to you and toe the company line and say, no, this is a great. I guarantee you it's not. I would never betray any trust, but I have heard from multiple people at probably every major consulting company on the planet and lots of the more mid-sized companies, at least domestically, how utterly miserable they are in their job. And again, from the outside, they may be towing the company line, but I guarantee you that that misaligned metric is creating highly, highly negative experiences for your employees. It just is. And we've talked about it in so many different aspects, from it driving everything you do. We can create a horrible customer experience as long as we hit our utilization number. I think I've shared this story, and there's lots of stories where people take vacation or they're out because they've had a child or whatever, and then they come back and then they're told, okay, well, we still have metrics to hit for this quarter, so now you're going to have to work 80 hours a week over the next 5 to 6 weeks in order to get your numbers back up, or else you're fired. That happens a lot. and,
It's
and
happened to
so
me.
it's, yeah, I mean, it's just it's a highly, highly negative experience. So that frustrates me, but it also frustrates me on the market side, in that doing it differently and aligning your goals to your why, your purpose as a company, not only creates hopefully happier, more content, fulfilled employees, that then spills over to the customer, and that you get much better engagements. Your experience is much more positive. You get much more value out of the engagements. And yet, a lot of the feedback is, we kind of like the old system. And you may have seen a tweet from me the other day where I mentioned it, where I was just, you're really feeling down this week. It's like, trying so hard to change the way it's done, because again, employees can lie about it, but under the traditional model, it's a very negative experience. It's actually a very negative experience for customers as well. But again, oftentimes they're not willing to admit it. You know, we just want utilization rate, and that's what's so frustrating. Is it's not just on the services side, it's also on the client side. Where they say, for years you guys have just sold us the utilization rate, and that's what we want. I'm like, that's stupid. We could work for you for 40 hours a week and provide complete crap deliverables that don't mean anything. And they're like, yeah, that's what we want. We just want to check a checkbox off that, we worked that many hours. Like, just show me how many hours you worked. And that's all we care about. I'm like, this is the dumbest conversation I've had in a long, long time, but it's happening and it's so, so frustrating. But again, it comes back to the topic, misaligned goals, right? So on the employee side, the goals are misaligned with the original intent and purpose of the company, and now I'm having a negative experience. The goals are misaligned on the client and the customer side because their goals are misaligned. They really don't care. It doesn't matter if you're selling analytics services or IT services or securities, it doesn't matter. They don't care about what the company's purpose is. All they care about is, what items do I need to check off so I can make sure that I get my bonus this quarter? And that's frustrating. Incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. To your point about like utilization and why it's like a horrible goal. Like, I think I may have mentioned this before, but like several years ago, working in an agency, I was managing a small team, and one of the guys on the team took like 2.5 weeks off because he was getting married. And, of course, the utilization spreadsheet takes into account time off,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's utilization and then client billability on this thing. So his utilization, it took into account he was using his time off,
Yeah.
but billability was low. And I got called into the office, and it's like, his billability is down. I'm like, yeah, he's out of the office. He's getting married. We knew this coming up for 6 months. Like, this is it. Like, well, we got to get his billability up. I'm like, if you look historically, he is regularly one of the top ones. He is regularly in the top when it comes to that metric. It's not going to be a problem when he gets back. And like the people looking at it, like it wasn't clicking for them. Like, it's going to be fine. We knew he was going to be out for 2.5 weeks. It's going to be fine when he gets back. And it was just so frustrating that conversation that he couldn't even take time off without someone raising a red flag, like, oh my God, there's a problem here with his metric. No shit.
Yeah. Um, how much of it do you think is, and I know that we're like, with this question, we're really straying outside the topic, but it's still grounded in the topic. How much of this do you think is driven by, our current topic, which is active versus passive ownership in a company? And maybe this flows into the other option is, how much of it do you think is driven by the way companies operate, in that they see employees as unfilling, unemotional robots, that are just a asset on the company's balance sheet, and maybe that is an output of active versus passive ownership. I'm not sure, but I've been thinking a lot about that question over the last couple weeks, because life is challenging. We all have things we go through that are challenging. We have our ups and downs. The world injects its own set of challenges on top of us, and we're all human and we all deal with things, and we're not just this robot that it's like, okay, we show up to work and we go into this robotic mode where we're not human. Yet it feels like so often the case that that is what is expected out of us in order to hit our measurement goals and objectives, and that we don't have any flexibility to be human within that. So if someone's sick, if something comes up, if events of the world are overwhelming or change the way that you can work, we have no ability to empathize with that and treat them as a human and say, look, we don't expect you to be 100%, 100% of the time. Yet, when it comes down to the goals that we align with how we measure productivity and is this a good employee or not, a lot of times that's what we are saying. We are saying, you're not allowed to be human. And that's very concerning to me. And again, coming back to our topic, is that an output of, a humanistic owner being passive in the business? I don't know.
I think it's a bit of a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
They feed each other. So if we go back to how we started this conversation a couple weeks ago, is you have someone that started a business, has been actively involved, built a product that customers love, a culture that employees want to be a part of, and then maybe they get sucked up in the allure of creating something bigger, more money, whatever. They just get sucked up into that, and so they become less active. So part of it is they just need to have some kind of goals that allow them to properly, from a distance, measure the health of the business, which in turn turns employees into like this, these robots. The employees have to be turned into that. So then others see that, and then it's like, okay, that's how I can scale my business. So like that's how this vicious cycle starts. So as you become less and less attached to the business, more detached from it, you need these um more or less like, yeah, robotic or automaton like goals of, I need to make sure you're doing this. I don't care how you get to it. I need you to reach these metrics, because the metrics may have started out as just an idea of being able to quickly measure the health of the business, but then the metrics become the goals. And then what happens is then the goals then force the employee and management, middle management especially, to treat the employees as just automatons. You're robots. You're cogs in a system that can easily be replaced if you don't hit those metrics. At least that's the way I see it. One feeds the other.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think, as like, if we look at the agency world, just about every agency in the digital media marketing and analytics space all use utilization.
Mm-hmm.
And and then the um it's all about selling business. It's about utilization. And then the vicious cycle there is we've sold more business. We need to hire employees. So we need butts in the seat. So we'll hire anybody. And then we need to keep their utilization up. So we need to sell more business. Well, we oversold the business again. We need to bring more people in, or we have a high attrition rate and we just need to keep swapping people in and out. So we just need generic goals that forces all employees to behave the same.
Yeah. Do you think this happens in other realms? We obviously, our experience is kind of white collar roles, especially like a lot of the things we deal with are almost purely digital, although most of our clients have a physical component to what they do. Do you think this happens in other places? I'm thinking about like building an office tower or something. There's lots of different components that go into that. If everyone is so misaligned, how does something as complex as a building that has all these pieces that need to work together happen without the thing crumbling and falling to the ground?
That's a good question. I should talk to a buddy of mine who's in construction project management. I mean, I know he deals. He's a um, yeah, he's a works for a general contracting company, and so he's got his subcontractors. I mean, like there's a lot of a lot of the stuff that we deal with in project estimation and whatnot. Um, yeah, I'd have to pick his brain about it, because when we've talked work and gone back and forth, like, there's definitely the times where he's got to go back to subcontractors and say, like, why are you billing me more? Like, this was your estimate, and back and forth. But I think you brought up a good point, like preventing it from falling apart. Like it's like there's a level of maybe like this is something real. We
Yeah.
need to make sure it gets done right. Whereas, like, think about it, like, every now and then when I get stressed out, I try to think of it this way too. Like, is what we're doing really like, and this is not to cheapen what we do, but it's like
Is
we're
this
not,
real life?
yeah, like I mean, we're I mean, yeah, we're impacting potentially millions of dollars in a budget, but it's like, having perspective on things, like, we're talking about not even anything that exists on paper.
Yeah.
All of it is
It's a lot of mental
was
gymnastics.
zeros and ones.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I'm just, my mind's kind of going a couple different directions, but part of me thinks is like, yeah, we're not building a building, we're not
Yeah.
running into a burning building, We're not making sure that this thing doesn't fall with people inside of it. We're not getting shot at. Um, so yeah, like, are we creating things to make it more important than it really, really is?
Yeah, and that's not to say that these other industries and ways of doing work are not without their challenges and problems for sure. And maybe they have similar ones, but it just always makes my brain hurt thinking about these examples where everyone is so disconnected. I'm like, how would this play out if I was building a railroad, or if we were building an office tower, or if we were, you know, building an airplane, or like this would seem highly catastrophic, you know? And I always go back to the example when I was working client side, where I had someone in the marketing team when I called them out and said, this marketing campaign is not working. It is lowering our lifetime value of our subscribers. Our subscribers are having a worse experience on the site now. This didn't work. And this person in marketing said to me, I don't care. My job is to drive traffic to the site. What happens with them afterwards is not my concern. And this campaign drove X% lift in traffic to the site. Therefore, it's a success. I'm like, is this real life? Is this a
Yeah.
real conversation we're having here?
Because think about it this way. Let's talk about this at a very, very high level, what we do compared to others. We're not preparing food, where if we do that wrong, customers can become ill. Not to say it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen, but when it does, it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good for the business. Um, we're not building something physical that someone could get hurt. It's it's marketing campaigns. It's these things that live out in the ether.
Mm-hmm.
They're not physical. They're not tangible, and yeah, in many ways, they're not real.
Mm-hmm.
So is it, maybe it is. That's why it is easier. And again, it's easy for us to see it because we work in it now. So we need to find a couple people to bring on to have this debate where, like, they're working in something tangible. They're delivering a tangible product
Yeah.
that, like, people are going to use. They're delivering something physical that, if done wrong, could seriously harm somebody. What guardrails do they have in place to make sure, like, that people don't say, I don't care? Because, like, for me, like, yeah, I could easily see it happening in our business because, and it's not to say that we don't care. Like, I think you and I, in our conversations, we truly care about making sure we're delivering something that people find valuable. But at the end of the day, it's not something that really exists. Like, and I think that's why I find, like, a lot of our peers, I've been noticing this trend the last 2 years.
But you're right. By and large, most people don't. Most people feel like what they do really doesn't matter. This is all just a mental gymnastics match. That doesn't really matter the outcome. We're just playing a game and it doesn't really matter. And you can see that when you talk to these companies and you bring very real advice and evidence and things that could change the way they work. And when they come back and say, I don't care.
Mhm.
That is incredibly frustrating to me because it can be tangible. We can change how people feel. We can change how people feel about their jobs, and that, wait, I am doing something meaningful, because they absolutely can. Like, what we do, the intelligence that we create around consumer experiences can be so insanely valuable. But oftentimes it just falls on people that simply don't care. And coming back to how we started the conversation, their goals, whether it's because you've got a passive owner or whatnot, are misaligned, and they really don't care because what they're driven by is their goals. And I think that that's why we've kind of found ourselves in this situation. And kind of going back to my tweet the other day where I said, it kind of feels like I'm purposefully jumping into a pool of raw waste and saying, I'm willing to jump into this shit because I've seen a better way. I want to help you guys see it. And 9 times out of 10, I hear from either, maybe an employee I'm trying to hire or a prospect I'm trying to sell to, nah, no thanks. We like swimming in this shit. We don't want you here. It's so draining because there is a different way. There is a better way. There is a tangible result to what we do. But man, most people just don't want to hear it. And it's sad and it's frustrating.
Yeah. Um, Another reason, like, kind of going down this path of, doing things that have meaning versus not, because like we're not necessarily always creating something physical. So I
Yeah.
was talking with a client earlier today, and we were starting to talk about like, what does the next year look like, what could it look like, some of the things they have coming up. We were also reflecting back on where his teams come, in the previous year. When we started working with them about a year and a half ago, the team was very, very green when it came to this. A very small team, pulled in many, many different directions. Sometimes they didn't know up from down, and then they had some turnover on there. And over the last year in particular, been helping them gain traction in leveraging data that's being collected. First of all, just going through and making sure it's data that can be trusted, but
Hmm.
then not just reporting on what's happened, but actually using it to help other teams understand what is happening so they can optimize better, and come up with better like landing pages, come up with a better homepage schema, based on what people are doing. So when we were talking today, I was saying, like, I'm heartened by hearing some of the questions that I'm getting when I meet with the team, because they're in that mindset of how can we actually use this data,
Mm.
not just report on what happened. I said that's a common pitfall. And then another common pitfall I've noticed with companies is just on the implementation side of things. And I flat out told them, I said, like, analytics implementation, after you get the initial implementation out, it is once you get that out and data is being collected, being in a constant state of implementation and constantly wiring up new dimensions, metrics, and stuff like that. Some of them could provide value, but not all of them do. But what it's also used from time to time is a cheap way to show progress.
Yeah.
We over the last month, we wired up these 6 dimensions and these 10 new events and everything, but no one asks, well, how are we using it? It's just used in the context of we did work. And that's what I think of when we think of this topic is when people like laud, you know,
The appearance of
implementation
work.
stuff. Yeah, the appearance of work, or we did this much as far as wiring it up, but again, it's no one's using it. People are going to
Yeah.
forget about it in a few weeks, versus like making sure that the data that they have is useful and they're actually using it, not just constantly implementing it.
Yeah. I actually have a pertinent tweet from this from March 7th. And I said, when I first started cooking, the dishes I created were heavy, lots of ingredients, bloated. The more I studied master chefs, the more I found that their creations were simple yet elegant, complex yet modest. And really, that was kind of a subtweet of the digital analytics world, where our goals are misaligned with what we're trying to do, the purpose for the company existing, and because that vacuum exists, our goals become the appearance of work. Um, we just need to implement, and that becomes, oh, we pushed out 5 enhancements this quarter, yay for us. So what? What is it doing? Are we actually creating something better? And again, like, it's a very pertinent, it's a very realistic analogy, in that it's true. When I first started cooking, it was all about the appearance of cooking. Like, the more ingredients I could put in, the heavier and like more stuff I can throw on the plate, the better, because I didn't have any kind of strategy or goal in mind on why I was trying to do it. But if you look at all of the master chefs, it's all about simplicity. It's all about a few ingredients, but high quality ingredients. It's about artistic. Are you mad? Ludicrous. It's all about artistically. What? Go get him. It's in that simplicity that the value is. But we lose that when our when our goals are misaligned.
Exactly. And that, and that's really, I think, the evolution of this conversation overall, to start putting a bow on the last couple of weeks, is that, I mean, it's hard. And I think I said this the very first episode, like, it is very hard to scale a business without going down this direction. This, it's very easy to do this. It's hard to scale a business and not do this. It's hard to scale a business and make sure that your employees aren't just empowered. I hate that. It's like, I empower you to do this. No, it's that they actually take a level of ownership and care that you would as an owner. It's hard to really develop goals and whatnot that really align with what your customers need, what the business is, the why the business exists. It's easy to just say our goal is X revenue. Our goal as a team, it's we as an agency, we need to be 89% billable. We need to be 82% utilized. Like, it's easy to do that. It's hard to say um we need customer retention. Customer retention's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I it's such an important conversation. And again, it's not easy, but it's easier when you have active ownership because the owner knows that why. There's a reason why they're going through the pain and struggle to do it. They're trying. There's a specific reason, and oftentimes they share that with their teams. It's when there's that transition out and there's lack of ownership involvement that it becomes challenging. In fact, I kind of want to throw a poll up on Twitter right now to see what kind of response I would get. But I wonder if you went and asked like 10 random friends and asked them, do you know why your company exists? Do you know the reason why the company you work for exists? I bet 9 out of 10 of them would say to make money.
Because at this point, that's what it is. it's
It,
it's just
there's
it
because no one has said otherwise. They don't know otherwise. And so again, if no one is taking the time to have this incredibly valuable conversation to say, Company X exists because, and I'm not talking about stupid mission statement and stuff you can print up and hang on the wall in your conference rooms. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about really, like, why was this company created? Why does it exist? I bet if I bet most people would struggle to be able to answer that, and if they didn't struggle, their answer would be, well, it exists. We exist to make money. And I think that really comes down to the core of this conversation and so many challenges that we face, whether it's trying to find meaningful work doing analytics, whether it's trying to find work that we feel fulfilled in doing, whether it's finding and creating partnerships that are important to us. I think a lot of it comes down to most of these things are not happening because we don't know why the company exists, and it puts us at odds. And again, if we don't know, then the default is for revenue, and if we don't know, then the default for me is, well, whatever makes me look best so that I can get my quarterly bonus. And until that's solved for, I don't know that these really negative experiences are really going to change.
And then I want to add one thing to that, as far as, you were talking, like, if it's not this, then the default's revenue. And then if no one comes in and corrects the default, the purpose is then completely lost. And the only purpose is then revenue. It's more than just a default. It is actually the purpose after a period of time.
Yeah,
It's just there to make money.
that's right.
And then everything degrades from there. You were talking about the employee, the, the employee experience, the customer experience, because where we started this a couple of weeks ago is we've all been to we've all seen that business where it starts off great, the experience is great, the product is great, and then something changes
Yeah.
and the product goes downhill, the experience goes downhill, and it's because the attention the owner's been taken, something, the ownership management's no longer involved, and then it just becomes about increasing revenue.
Yeah, and the dangerous thing about that slope is that it becomes so easy to rationalize everything in the name of revenue, and that's why these things happen. That's why you can take a company, and we've talked a lot about restaurants in this sense. You can take a restaurant that had such a great customer experience, the quality of the food was so high, and once you destroy the purpose for why that restaurant exists and you make it revenue, it's so easy to justify the removal of everything else. This is a really crappy experience for our customer. Yeah, but we can slam more people through the system and make more money this month. This is a really horrible experience for our employees. Yeah, but we can make more money by, by underpaying them and trying to get more return on our investment in their salary. This is a really crappy customer experience because we've swapped out good food for crappy food. Yeah, but we can save on our margins, so we're making more money. Like, you can rationalize everything, and those are just kind of ethical choices, not even getting to the point where you start to make unethical choices, but we'll make more money, and our purpose is money, revenue. And that's why it's such a dangerous slope to go down.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, like this one, this is hard. Being actively involved in the business is hard, especially if you are trying to scale it. Take like that corner restaurant in a neighborhood and you know add new locations. It is very, very hard. This is
Yeah,
not the easy thing. um but
it's worth
why
it.
do anything if you don't want to do the hard stuff?
That's right. Yep. And if you want to leave your mark, I mean, again, I think part of it is a societal problem in that we've overvalued things. You know, well, this is how big my bank account is. This is how many vacation homes I have. This is how many, super yachts I own. We've overvalued those things. And because of that, that's what we've determined as success. And I think I want to believe we're going back to a point where we value the mom and pop store, the little shoe cobbler on the corner on Main Street that is passionate about being a master of their craft and creating really amazing lifelong relationships. Are they going to build $1 billion business and sell out to Silicon Valley? No. But is that really the measure of success? And it's sad because that's what we've made it. And yeah, how happy are people? Are they happier now? I don't know. It doesn't feel like it.
I don't think they are.
It
No.
doesn't feel like it. I think we need to go out of our way to celebrate those business owners, that single location restaurant that says, "Look, I don't need to have, 5 vacation homes. There's a line that I have enough. I want to do what I'm passionate about and not compromise on those things. That's what makes me a success." We don't celebrate that, and we should.
Yeah. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I've really, really enjoyed this topic, and
Agreed.
it's something that I do think about often, just in my personal life. Like the going to like out of the way places, the hole in the walls, the mom and pop shops that have been around for a while, the mom and pop restaurants, where the owner's still there. There's people that greet you when you walk in, and is they have employees that care. They give a shit.
And I think if we appreciate those things again, I think we need to do a better job of showing those owners that we appreciate them. I think it's our obligation. If we truly enjoy those experiences, I think we need to go out of our way to let them know that we appreciate them. Because if we don't, then it's a hard row. Again, like, they're going down a path that is not the path that says that they're going to be successful. And it's so easy for them to say, "You know what? I'm just going to compromise and I'm going to do things differently." And then it changes, and then we're sad, and then we're mad at them. We're just like, "Why? It was so good. It was so amazing. And why did you change it?" Well, maybe some of that's on us. Maybe some of that's on the consumer, that if we really appreciate things like that we need to find a way to make sure that they understand that we appreciate it. And
Yeah.
that could be financially, that could be emotionally, that could be a lot of different things, but part of it's got to be on us.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's a great place to end it. So we'll wrap it up there, and catch everybody later.
So, yep.
See ya.